So today on my podcast, we've got Julian Baker at Livesmart Financial Planning. Julian's been the MD there for 5 years now. Interesting start to the profession, so I'm told. So we're going to be hearing more about how he got into the profession, but in addition to that as well, what he's done to get fee-based financial planning into the business and what strains that's had in the business. But in addition to that as well, what he does on the self-generation side of things. And also, in addition to that, taking on a student as well, which, as you probably know, is something that I try to advocate as much as possible. Julian?
Nice to be here.
Thank you very much.
So, I got into the profession, I would say by accident, really, in that age 18 I was selling cars. I had probably 1 to 2 years in the motor industry. Selling cars, very, very good preparation at a young age for elements of the human part of financial services. I preferred, I would say, the finance part of cars compared to the car part of cars. So I started to enjoy doing finance type stuff. And then I sold a car to a sales manager at Brittanic Assurance. He said, "Look, do you want to come and work for me?" So I said, "Well, I'll come in for a chat." At that stage, I was getting a bit disillusioned with the motor trade. I found it a little bit repetitive. But I enjoyed the place where I worked. I enjoyed the people I worked with. And it's the usual thing where it's so hard to leave when it's your first start, your first job. You don't even know how to leave. You've never done it before. So anyway, I ended up going for an interview. They offered me the job, but at this stage I was only 20. And I think Britannic's policy was they could only take someone aged 21. So it's a minimum age. So they said, well, look, by the time you get off the financial planning certificate training and courses with all the exams, you're going to be in a position where you are 21. So the time you're doing the job, you'll be old enough. So they made an exception, a bit of a head office thing on approval. Worked there. I was a financial advisor then, as it was, but really you were selling insurance to some degree because of how the market was 30 years ago. And I would say that's when I came into my element, really. I'd say it taught me how to find new business, from door knocking to pull a phone book out, ring someone up. But I was frustrated by elements of restriction because in places like Brittanic Assurance, you had an area. And the minute you went out of your area, it caused major political trouble in the office, even though that person wouldn't have been in front of that client.
How big was the area that you tended to have on the whole?
I basically had one large council estate in a place called Eastwood in Nottingham, which is an ex-mining type town. So some of the other areas were similar, some were a bit better, whatever better means. Some were, all similar sizes because of the way they were divided up. I would say mine was a medium-sized one. It was a tough time. I was 20. Everybody you went to see would say, "Well, you're a bit young." I didn't look that young, but compared to some, but you still, to an average 40, 50-year-old ex-miner, with £200,000 to invest, they're like, why would I listen to you? So it was challenging, and it did make you realise then how hard it was. Even more so than I would say on age, because everybody then, I would say who I worked with, was generally older than me in the office. I'm talking 20 years. So I was literally a kid. I would say me then going into the office doing well, because I'd worked more hours than anyone else. I lived with my mum and dad. I had nothing to lose. I was keen, sharp, hungry. I would say it caused trouble. Because suddenly your sales figures, you start to climb the board in the office, which everyone at that stage had a sales board. Then you start getting the thing, your sales manager's doing the business for you and all the usual stuff because they just try and do stuff to get to you. So it's a bit like football. It's a mind game then at that stage. They just try and get to you. And then, in fairness, all at that point, I'd say the industrial branch element of financial services was coming to an end. And just at that point, companies like Allied Dunbar and some of the other Tide sales forces were building rapidly. So I decided to go self-employed. Now, bear in mind, I was probably at this stage 21, 22 maybe. I went self-employed with no clients because I couldn't take any clients with me. I got the usual letters saying you can't talk to anyone, even though I hadn't at that stage. And I think that pushed me a certain direction, and the direction it pushed me was mortgages. Because as a younger person, particularly then, just as mortgages were starting to become less bank, a little bit more broker, so it was really at the start, I would say I almost created a loss leader to get in front of clients. So it then was a remortgage, where you could speak to anybody and say, look, I can move your mortgage, I can save you 40, 50 quid a month. And on that basis, I can we could afford to do some insurance, or we could afford to set a pension up for you. And it literally started like that. That was probably 5 to 6 years of graft, from almost ringing the phone book. And I did used to ring the phone book.
As in
cold call.
Yeah, so
because you could cold call then, wasn't it? Illegal.
So the old, I remember the way I remember it being in my house when I was in the 90s. I mean, the big thick one.
The old BT telephone book, and that all started because when I first went self-employed, I went into an office in Derby, which at the time was run by two people, one of which is still alive and is still my friend. And it was virtually just throw a phone book at you and say, well, that's how you find a client. You just ring anyone, talk to anyone, go somewhere, do something. It's just activity. So it's an activity-led model. And then obviously you used to have centralised sales managers from like Royal & Son Alliance at the start. Then in the end, Royal & Son Alliance shut the sales force down, so I ended up moving to Allied Dunbar because the business I was with moved to Allied Dunbar, so I didn't really have a say in it. So I can remember going to the training centre in Swindon, video role plays, sales training, exams on their products, you name it. Great experience. A lot of pinstripe suits, a lot of gold cufflinks and Rolexes. I wasn't in that territory at that stage. And then after that, I decided to leave that business because, to be honest, the tied Salesforce thing was all breaking up a little bit. And then the way mortgages went, it actually almost for a bit went it was virtually non-regulated. So it was an opportunity for me to set a business up with limited cost, limited paperwork, admin compared to what it is now. And we grew, and it is simple how we grew it. It started off year one quite mental. I had a business partner then. We were both in the same boat where we literally could not work enough hours to cover what work was coming in. Then after that first year, word of mouth, it just mushroomed. At this stage then we started to move to get more support. So we went to Personal Touch when it was the network before Primus, or Primus, or I can't remember what it's called, because that was after our time. We ended up probably at its peak getting up to about 600, 650 a year in turnover, just on the back of mortgages and protection. Then we ended up, because obviously the network saw what we'd done, we ended up doing or running a regional support centre, which Helen, my wife, came in around this time. She started doing a few mortgages and also started doing supervision on around about 120 other brokers. So she was effectively a supervisor for the network in that, which was a separate business. We did meetings, sales meetings, where you'd get 50, 60 of them into a room and do food and drinks, and it'd be a bit of a social thing, and we'd have a bit of a budget for it, and we'd have a few speakers in and a few sponsors. And then that was actually just a self-perpetuating monster of a business in terms of just volume, probably up to the credit crunch. And then the credit crunch changed everything. So the credit crunch meant we went from probably doing £650,000 a year turnover to more like 25. So it killed it, because we were mainly, our success was mainly first-time buyers, mainly purchasers. And that's what the credit crunch killed. So at that point, it actually scared me a little bit. So I probably started to think, right, I need to diversify. I'd already started to think about going back to being full financial advisor again. because it felt like we're missing opportunities. But, you know, and you're just so busy, you think, where can I even do an exam or do this or do that? And there were, like there is now, there were barriers to getting back into it. You know, you had to have a business that would supervise you, so then I'd have to rely on someone else. So anyway, it sort of bounced on a little bit. And then in the end, I just thought, right, I'm going to give my business to my wife, because now it's a lower turnover business. It's more manageable. She took over and still runs it to this day. And I went IFA, set up from scratch, went direct to the FCA, which was great for about a year and a half. And then it got a bit tricky with, as you start to do client stuff and you get busy, you then can't cope with the admin side. Because bear in mind, we'd already got momentum, we'd already got people we could talk to from the 2,000 or 3,000 mortgage clients. Yeah. So it kicked off quite fast. And then year 2, I was in that thing where, again, I thought I sort of need support, really. So I went towards True Potential for support. Then on the back of shares, I would say, or the promise of, and a little bit more IT-based support, I ended up going True Potential Tide, Wealth Management. The slight problem I had with that was True Potential. I was still crossing over a little bit, doing a few mortgages. True Potential didn't really want mortgages. They didn't say that, but they didn't. They wanted investments and they wanted platform-based business. So we had a problem about 1 to 2 years in, where I had a Halifax mortgage agency shut because they did an audit. They asked me for some proof of why certain mortgages looked like they did. I sent them proof, and as it was crossing over in the post, they sent me the letter just shutting the agency down, so they didn't even look at the evidence to explain why. They just shut the agency. True Potential didn't support me, because why would they? They don't need to, didn't want to. So I was suddenly in a position where I was effectively sacked. So on the back of being sacked, it made me reappraise things a bit, and that's when I started thinking about what I was going to do next. And on the back of that, I had a chat with Nigel, who I knew from when I first went direct to the FCA, because he had his DFM business. So we'd got effectively like a common ground where we'd done work together. And then on the back of that conversation, and really I would say me saying, look, I'm bored of all this. I'm bored of what's happened now and someone else being in control. I said, I feel like I want to do something big. Have you got any money? Nigel said, yeah, I think there's something we can do. We put a deal together and we bought 2 businesses. We bought, well, more, 3, 4, because we bought a small one as well. So Nigel was more interested in the Isle of Man, so he bought a business in the Isle of Man, which we've got to this day, but Nigel runs that. And then we've got the UK business, which is Livesmart. Sunk into that business as a small business we bought in Kent. And then my business then went into that and folded into it. And then at that point, we made a decision we were going to be focused more on financial planning, because as everyone knows, the market sort of started to lean more towards financial planning. And that's where we're at today. That business has evolved, developed, scaled up a little bit.
You're giving me so much there to go through.
There's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I mean, amongst all that, to be fair as well, we did some property development and we went offshore and we did all sorts. I mean, I would say I had a spell in my life before children when day and night was for working. It was just ridiculous. I don't even think I could do it now.
Well, I hear that. I mean, I think as we were saying before, I think when you've got children, it does make it very, very difficult, very challenging. You can't...
Changes your mindset as well, and I think for the better. I didn't used to give myself time, now I do, where I can. It's challenging. You know, work to some degree has to come first, but so do your children, so do your friends, so does your mind.
I know. It's just so difficult getting it all together, and I think, again, as we were saying, I think that it can lead to you sort of putting too much pressure on yourself, and then eventually, like I am today, being a bit under the weather.
Yeah,
as
you
a
get
result
run
of it,
down, and then you think, why? Because you're not always at your best, are you, when you start getting run down? And I think that's a challenge. I think that now we're in a world where the opportunities are there, but you've just got to know when to say no.
You just so many things to go through there. The first thing was, I was just interested in terms of the selling car side of things and the taking your experiences there and putting it into being a financial planner. What was really useful from what you learned there that made you good when you went to Brittanic?
I think it was, for me, and this might just be actually a leaving school thing as much as car sales itself, but I think at a young age I realised that people say you can't do something. And I can remember, for example, can you remember you might not remember this, but on cars you used to be able to get extended warranties because they didn't have 3-year warranties, they had 1-year warranties. And I can remember saying to some of the guys in the showroom, why don't we sell extended warranties when we sell a car? Because surely some people would value it. Well, no one ever bothers because there's not enough money in it. I was like, well, what if you sell 20 a month? No one ever sells 20 a month. So I basically just decided to get on the phone and sell them over the phone to people that had already bought cars. And then suddenly people start seeing money coming in and thinking, well, actually, you can do it. And then it's similar on finance. It's just like ways you can sell finance that make a car cheaper because of all the allowances and things like that Vauxhall used to give. So you wouldn't be selling the car, you'd be selling the car based on the finance, giving them a better deal on the car. And that's when I realised, for me, it was all about the numbers, really, and the finance part. I hated selling cars.
What, in terms of the benefit for you, if you were doing, just out of interest here, if you were selling those extended warranty bits or the finance side of things, what did that actually mean in your back pocket in terms
Not much, because I was literally a junior. I was the person that filled in the book packs that you find in your glove box. That was my writing in those, and I was a person that taxed the cars and checked them before they got delivered. I was the lackey, really. So for me, it was just when someone says you can't do something or that don't work, you realise as a younger person you've got nothing to lose, have you? So you just think, I'll just prove them wrong. So you end up proving someone wrong there, and then what it teaches, every time there's a barrier, it puts you in that frame of mind where you think, well, I've heard this before.
And then that was the same at Brittanic as well.
Brittanic was different barriers, I would say. There was an age-based barrier, because at that point it was the old insurance man scenario. And they'd say things like, well, because obviously we had an area where you had to collect premiums. So you had to go, I think 1 day or 2 days a week, you had to collect the premiums, but it was your opportunity to see a lot of people as well. So I used to see that as time to prospect for new business, because you're in front of people anyway while they pay the premiums. Where other people used to see it as to collect and get the money in. And then I thought, right, what happens if, because they used to run the areas in debit, so I was like, why don't they run them in credit? So you've got your money up front. If you say miss a week or you're ill, you're only then going into sort of debit if you miss a week, rather than being automatically always behind. So I did a thing where I just got everyone's premiums up front and got an extra week or two, and then it got where the area was in credit and everyone else was in debit. So the entire country was in debit, my area was in credit. So then obviously head office started seeing this and thinking, why don't we all do this? And it set a bit of a thing. Obviously people didn't love that because it meant doing work. You have to, then when you start doing different kinds of selling, to sell someone to pay an extra £3 that week is another form of selling, isn't it? Well, why do I need to get in credit? Well, if I'm ill, then you're not in arrears. It just means your premiums are safer, your policies are safer. There's no arrears where then you get behind and you've got to pay £15 and it was literally like that kind of sales, to persuade someone there's a benefit in them being in credit. But again, you start to learn how to persuade. From something so simple, I learned very young that you can persuade people to do most things.
What, just with the age barrier, what did people say to you and how did you overcome that?
It was a tricky one, because I think you're in a position where in certain situations, no matter what you say, they're not listening. I would say now, What would I say now? I mean, now it's probably one of those where you'd have to say, well, look, would you rather deal with someone that's getting near retirement, probably less interested, or someone that's really enthusiastic about making your future better? Which do you prefer? And you can almost turn it into a bit of a that v that. But other than that, it depends whether they're going to listen to you, doesn't it? Even when you throw something in.
I guess when you're starting out as well, I guess the side of it is that you could sort of sell the fact that they're going to be one of your few clients, which actually means that they'll have a lot of time spent on them.
Yeah,
I guess
there's
I
that
don't
as
know.
well. I mean, sometimes I'd literally almost be like, look, why don't you just use me, see how you go over the next 6 months, a year, and then if you're not happy, go somewhere else, but you won't go somewhere else. Sometimes I used to mask it with a bit of cockiness, because sometimes it does work. Or it's like that weird, like, give someone the confidence, but it's sort of you just washing over it with a bit of overconfidence. So I think I got through my 20s with overconfidence.
I think people like that as well. I think if somebody said that to me,
And bluntness.
yeah.
You know, sometimes if someone had asked me a question, will you do this? No. For me, it was yes or no. I used to be very black and white. I've probably got less so as I've got older. But I think if people trust black and white answers, they don't like grey. And I think it makes them trust the fact that if you've just answered directly as well, you've not done that politician thing where you don't really ever answer a question. I've always quite liked answering a question, even if people don't love the answer. Which is an interesting one when you get into things like protection and when they throw things back at you, like, oh, I don't want to spend £10 a month. And you're like, well, you've got 2 children. Do you think they would want you to spend £10 a month if anything happened to you? It's just having the bravery to be that blunt. It could be a fine line, and not everybody can do it. But if you learn how to do it properly, it can be very effective in a financial planning, stroke, even a mortgage environment.
Well, I think it's great. That last question that you asked about, is it worth it?
I think the minute you have to paint a picture to make someone think, is their answer stupid, a picture can speak more words than anything I can actually say to them, really.
And I mean, the reality is as well is that if it's somebody that's quite, I don't know how much the protection premiums are nowadays, but I pay about £70 a month.
Yeah, I'm probably similar. Yeah,
and there's, I mean, I've got not a huge amount of cover, about 300 grand of cover, but I mean, for the peace of mind, I don't know why people.
I think there's still, I mean, like everybody buys, or a lot of people buy, life assurance and critical illness cover still to this day because it's linked to a mortgage. A few people take extra cover over and above the mortgage being paid off and think, well, that covers me for my income not being here. There's still not many people, or less people, taking income protection. And to sell income protection is weirdly challenging. Yet, how many people get sick compared to die within a life assurance policy? The stats on payment that pay out are massively different, to the point where on stats you'd buy income protection over and not bother with any life assurance.
It's weird this. I wasn't expecting to go down the protection route, but the thing is, though, is that it's probably one of the things that needs to be.
It's undersold.
Yeah, it's undersold, without a doubt.
I mean, I'd say the best people at the minute in the protection world are mortgage brokers.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Not financial planners.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And then you think, actually, that is ridiculous. And I think the problem is financial planners, and it probably links to some of the other things we're going to talk about, but financial planners are generally dealing with older people, even if you say older people being 45 plus. At that stage, they've probably already got some kind of insurance or death in service or sick pay scenario, or the package with work so much better, or they've got 200,000-300,000 built up in the pension. There's less need. So therefore, there's less reason to talk about it, so people don't. Some people don't even mention it, me included at times. You compare it to, say, if you dealt with financial planning clients in the 20s, there's nearly always a protection need, even if it's for income protection.
It still seems strange, though, that you wouldn't discuss it, particularly if you're going to be dealing with people that own a managed business. You would have thought that key man insurance was particular.
Yeah, I mean, I would say at the minute my slight weakness in clients is probably director-based business, and weirdly, go back 20 years, that used to be my strength. So it's something I need to get back into, and we're looking at it. But you can only be in so many places. But I think if we get better at getting in front of businesses, there's so many things we can talk. Protection, cross-option agreements, succession plan. You know, you die, your business partner's going to be in partnership with your wife. Does he want that? Or does he want to be in a position to buy her out? And it's a pre-agreed buyout with a cross-option agreement backing it up. I think there's so many conversations before you even get to pensions and get to private medical and get to death in service for your staff and employee benefits. And how many people go straight into employee benefits, don't even talk about the directors, yet there is no employee benefits without the directors. And I think people forget all this. But I'll know more about that probably in the next couple of months, because I'm actually meeting another advisor who specialises in that part of the market, and it'll be interesting what because then I'll see it his perspective, which is probably different to mine. So that might be one for part 2.
Yeah, definitely. So now going on to the fee-based financial planning side of things.
Yes.
Tell me about that, what you've been doing to implement it and how it's gone so far.
So I would say take last year v this year, just for perspective. Last year we were a 1% up from 1% ongoing business. We've got some big clients. We've got a handful of clients well over $1 million, some creeping up higher. We've got a lot of clients between $500,000 and $1 million, and then you start to look at some of the charges, and they were just getting too spicy anyway. So we're already starting to think about, before even consumer duty came in, we're starting to analyse this a bit and think, you know what, we've got to start thinking what we do. Bearing in mind, a lot of this was sort of inherited because we bought the business when we did, and then you're that busy getting the business working right with all the mishaps that go off in it to get to where we are now. It's so difficult to start messing around with fee structures and things like that. So we made a decision the minute last Christmas turned, new year, new start. We're going to try or sample just being flat fee or time based, and it was partly on the back of me mentally setting myself a bit of a target to try and get into the lawyer market, as in deal with more lawyer-based clients.
Okay.
And I don't really mean just solicitors. I mean sort of corporate law, like top law firms all around the country. So that's what we've done. It's been challenging. It's been like setting up a new business. I can't say it's been easy to A, get in front of them, B, deal with them, because they're a different kind of challenge as a client. And then they're so busy to then get data out of them to actually do your job has been a challenge. But we're starting to now just probably come out of the other side after 7 months it's taken to really start to see the fruits, and it's just starting to happen. But my attitude was, if I'm going to go properly for that market, they don't charge percentage fees, generally speaking. So that was one bit. So it was a marketing aspect. Then obviously consumer duties coming in consolidated that, because you start to think about time you're spending on clients, how do we treat them, what are we doing for the money. So it was linked to that as well, and it's become more so. But like a lot of people, we're probably only just getting to that stage where the data sets are right, where we can analyse it across the client base. So this year has been purely flat fees, I would say. We've just put a new CRM in, and then that allows us to start doing timed stuff, but we've not really started using that yet. We've got a rough idea what the minimum is we need per case, so we've got as far as that. And I think from that, I'd say from all of that, at the start of the year, we also set a bit of a target where if we're going to go flat fees, it opens up a different market. And that market really is younger people, which, as you know, last year I toyed with, and we debated on how to do it and what would be, because there's no easy answers to some of the questions. And I think the fact is, if you go into the market of 18 onwards, and if you say 18 to 25, maybe 18 to 30s, you have to change your model to fit. And I think you're probably going to be running on those particular clients 1 to 2 year loss. And I think you've got to weigh up whether you're prepared to do it to give back, do it because you don't want to exclude people, or maybe all of it. We decided we're just going to roll with it for now and then see what hidden productivity there was in it. And we're now starting to see that in July. So bear in mind this started in January. And we just daft things like clients were earning 50 grand a year, now they're earning 80. They were putting X in the pension, now they're putting in a sizable amount because suddenly they've got a lot more income to spare, and we've set them up on financial planning. You've sort of conditioned them to think you're the first port of call. We've had some of them ringing us to say, can you just check my contract before I take the job? And things like that. And you think, well, this is starting to open you up where you're the first person they speak to about a lot of things that relates to money, down to, I'm thinking of changing my car, how do you think I should do it? And it starts to come back to then I'm almost advising people on car finance, which is going back to when I was 20. But the fact is, if you become that person at that age, the minute their parents say to them, or the parents get ill, who's their first port of call? So you're going to get that business as well. If they, as they work their way through the ranks, and you never know where people are going to end up, when they're 25, where could they be at 45? It's an interesting future for the business, where I think if you deal in everybody's 80 plus, arguably you've got a dying business. So that's where now we have got, if you dissected our client base, we've got every age.
I'm interested to know here, because with the fee-based side of things, it seems like there's going to be a big difference in terms of the fee income that comes in as a result of it. I mean, as we were saying earlier, you know, one of your clients, your biggest clients, that has £1 million, and you were beforehand charging about 10 grand. So 10 grand. And then you've gone down, the fee has been substantially reduced.
Yeah, we've had to reduce fees, which I think needed to be done anyway. Just because even if you forget consumer duty, what's right, what's wrong, you know when you're charging too much. So I think if you voluntarily go to a client and reduce it, it's a lot safer than that client coming to you and saying, why am I paying this amount of money? Because at that point, they're going, you've lost them. And I think to some degree, I think that could become evident with other businesses that we know charge quite a lot, because I think the market's starting to get sharper to it. Bear in mind, fees will be a major discussion at the minute all round, so you've got to ask yourself, what's the riskiest for your business, to try and get away with it and earn money now, or don't try and get away with it, offer it up front so you look like the bigger person. I played it that way, rather than I'll just sit on my laurels and wait for everyone to come to me saying, why are you charging me this? It might not happen. There's always going to be a client that doesn't, but does that make it right? I think so. You've got to ask yourself morally as well, like based on time spent. I think consumer duty has made a lot of people think about that would never even contemplate it.
Yeah, it's consumer duty is one of those things where I think that there have been. Be careful what I say. I think there's been some actual benefits from it.
In professionalism, eventually, and I don't think it's a short-term thing. I think it can't hurt.
I think the only thing that I slightly, I don't know, where I'm a little bit funny on it, is the fact that it seems to me like they might be trying to control how much things are priced at some point.
There's options for that, yeah.
And that's where it doesn't sit easy with me, because we live in a free market economy, and as far as I'm concerned, you should be able to do what you want.
I mean, we've sort of thought about this, and the way we've sort of, I'd say it's a slight hedge of bets mixed with maybe good business sense, I don't know. But we've started to separate transactional from financial planning and cash flow modelling. And it gives us the choice down the road, not necessarily this year, maybe next year it'll start, where we can actually charge separate for financial planning stuff. Bear in mind, financial planning in its own right is not regulated, so the FCA can't interfere quite as much with that. They can interfere with what we charge for a pension transfer or a transactional scenario. It also gives us the option to do what going back again, go back to my car sales days. It gives us the option to do that old school thing, which is for the right reason, upsell.
Mm.
So, for example, if we've got 250 clients and they've all got financial plans, there's going to be some that are overachieving on it. There's going to be some that have got red and they've got gaps and shortcomings. How many people, if we just offered it out, if we said, look, we want to stress test every financial plan to see what happens if there's a 30% stock market crash, and see what the impact is to your shortfall or your surplus, because you can run it both ways. What would clients be prepared to pay for the service? Now, if you never mention it, they're not going to pay anything. If you mention it, explain the benefits, so this is where the upselling comes in. Would it be valuable to some clients? Potentially, because I think it's in the eyes of the beholder. Like all value, it's in the eyes of the beholder.
Mm.
But you think, well, even if you had 250 clients, if 50 said yes and you charged 500 quid for a big stress test, a lot of work, quite a lot of admin for us to do. You've got to update every plan. You might start to discuss things, and bespoke things start to creep in, like, well, I've got some inheritance I'm expecting. But again, you're sort of upselling and potentially getting more business on for the upsell, which creates more transactions.
Do you... has this been done throughout the business? So fee-based, so you took over the business in Kent, you've got all the other businesses. Has it been a case of saying this to all clients, or is it just a gradual thing?
So at the minute, it's a very gradual thing where we're just starting to price keener the transactional stuff, so we can then justify fairly. If we start to do extra financial planning work, or we can suggest to someone, look, we need to update your plan, but it's going to cost £200-300 because we've not charged you for that previously, because we're just doing transactional stuff. I think the difference is it's back to consumer duty. Clients are paying for what they're doing, what they're using, not where we just charge it out. We've not done the work. Otherwise, if people say, well, I need £2,500 because I'm doing financial planning and cash flow modelling, how much of that is the cash flow modelling? How much of it's a transaction? Because they just sort of lump it in together. So I think if you separate it, it gives you upsell options. And I think also, which then arguably pays for this to some degree anyway, because you create value, which is where, the old school thing of a bit of persuasion comes in as to whether someone needs it. And I think it's a more professional way of doing it, because if you separate the two, your transactions are completely free of any conflict, even to some degree with the financial plan being separate. That becomes its own conversation. Does it make you do it better? Probably. I was going to be devil's advocate a little bit, because I liken this to being what a solicitor, the way that a solicitor operates, and I think most of us will have dealt with a solicitor in some way, shape, or form. In fairness, in my own experiences recently of dealing with a conveyancer, they've been absolutely superb, which has actually been... That's rare.
yeah. But they were really brilliant. They've been fantastic, really on it, and chasing us for stuff as well at times, which is rare. But my experience in the past is that any reason to charge you something, they've been on it straight away.
Yeah.
So I've sent you an email, I've spent half an hour on the phone with you, or 5 minutes on the phone, all the 5 minutes gets added up to a quarter of an hour, and my time's 300 quid an hour. Do you think it could go that way?
I think definitely if you did it wrong, and I think this is the line, isn't it, with sale on anything, be it transactional, our fees generally, you sail a line of what's plausible, what's fair, what you should and shouldn't do, what benefits the client, or are you just selling unicorns? I think if it's done right, and I think it needs definitely measuring a little bit, I think it adds value. Otherwise, you wouldn't suggest it. And I think that's when you should be charging properly for the time you use. And I think if you can prove to clients, this work could start timing things, and then we say, look, this is the time it's taken us in the back office. I think it's a bit more plausible than just making it up, which I think at the minute a lot of people just make the fees up. They just, why is it 1%? Well, just made up. Well, why not 3?
Well, I think
why not 10?
as we were saying before, it can get to the stage where I think that there's a lot of clients, the smaller clients tend to be more time consuming, I would say, and probably not profit making a lot of the time.
It's harder to make profit on younger clients with less money or less funds to invest, but that's now.
Could you argue in this respect then, if you have your fees like the way that they are going to be structured, it's probably going to be more difficult for a younger person to be able to pay those fees than if it was on the old model?
So it's been interesting what we've found. So obviously when you're dealing with younger people, you can prejudge, and I think we did a little bit initially, but when you actually get into the depths of it, you realise you do that first bit, which is your loss leader, and by doing the first bit, you show them what is the benefit of financial planning because they're doing it, and you can show them then how detailed you can cash flow model, not just cash flow model. You can go, we can feed your inheritance into it. We can feed when you intend to move house and upsize your house, when you're going to change your car, you want a holiday before you have children, all this kind of stuff. You can get quite detailed. They start to buy into it, and then when they buy into it, they're more engaged. Where, let's be honest, who's engaged until you see what you're going to get? It's a bit like that argument for having a test drive, isn't it? If you have a test drive, you're more likely to buy a car than if you don't have a test drive. It sells you the car because you're driving it. You can feel it, you can touch it. People respond to those things. So I think young people, we found, if they experience it, they get quite hooked by it, and then it gets more and more. So you have to do the time then a little bit, and it might be in some clients it could be a year, some it could be, but some at 3 months, where I could ask Kaylee, does a lot of the Zoom based stuff, so I could ask Kaylee 3 months on from the last time I asked her, look, how are you getting on with some of your clients? What do you feel? How do you feel they're responding, and what's your feedback? And she's like full of enthusiasm, because the clients are loving it, and you realise there's then massive demand for financial planning in this once they know what it is. Once they know they're not going to be actively sold something, and it's like it's chatty, it's soft, it's we're working with you, not like trying to just get you to do stuff. And then what tends to happen, it brings stuff out, and it gives us a constant job list where they just grow. Things grow. And it might start with things like, it might start to edge towards the parents, and it might start to edge towards the friends. And then it becomes referrals. And you start to think, actually, what we are doing is in a way what I did on mortgages in my early 20s. I started off making no money, loss leader, and then you turn it into a business that actually turns over quite a bit for the time, and then it almost turns into where you've got 3,000 or 4,000 clients, and you think, well, actually, that mirrors a lot of online models. Anyone you can think of, the scale of them now is monster, but when they started out, it was all about these kind of numbers, and I think the demand's there, but you've got to do the work to sell them the idea and show them, not just tell them what it's all about. It doesn't mean anything because they don't understand what financial planning is. I think there's misconceptions on it. There's misconceptions on the cost of it. So yeah, we're finding that now we're just starting to see the fruits of it already at month 7 on that part. So you think, well, if we're seeing it at month 7, there's not many businesses you do where you see fruits that early. And you see the response so good, and you can already see the potential bubbling under the surface. But bear in mind, I say month 7, we were dabbling with it last year, we just didn't get it right.
Yep.
And even a year or so before that, I've constantly tried this in different formats. But I think now the other thing is, you've got no geographical limits. It's on Zoom. So we've got clients in Edinburgh. Bear in mind, our main client base is in Leeds. I'm based in Derbyshire. We've got staff all over the country, and we're nearly in every area of the country with, at the minute, 10 young clients that we've fed into that specifically to be Zoom only. We've started to also get some of our main client base, daughters, sons, their children. So again, it's getting them almost educated on financial planning. It's basically like educating first, give a bit back, but you can see the potential.
You've opened up so many things again. I mean, I could have gone down the route about geographical restraints, but I mean,
this is the scope of it. You start to think about it, and you think, well, actually, it's completely scalable as well. Because if Kaylee built up 200 clients, and then she's like, look, I'm getting to the point where I'm at capacity, how hard would it be to get somebody else in another part of the country who's just got the right skill set, doesn't want to necessarily travel to an office, doesn't want to work and drive around like I do, doing 14,000, 15,000 miles a year, and a solid wage for doing a really useful job to people that really demand and want it. And you look at it and you think, well, it's not that hard, is it, for Kaylee to give 100 clients away in a few years' time, set them going, and then we keep building. It's easily scalable. And once you start to see profit, the next loss leader is not quite as hard, is it? Because that profit's paying for that loss every time you expand it. And I think there's people now that do advice if they didn't have to drive around. And I know this sounds ridiculous, but how many female advisors don't like going into a house where they might be seeing a single man in a house? And it starts to bring all that into... And you think, well, actually, even if I had staff that actually said, well, the minute it's a single bloke, we default to Zoom to start with, it gives you the option because you've got a model.
God, I hadn't even thought about that, and that's something that...
And you know, I am surrounded by women, effectively, and you do start to see these issues, and like, as a man, I don't think about any of this stuff, but you realise these issues are there. And when you start thinking about these kind of models, you realise it actually does tick a few boxes in terms of that. And the fact, let's face it, some people can't drive. They can't be a financial advisor, can they? Technically.
It makes it very challenging. I mean,
because there's always someone that wants face to face. So Kaylee can just refer them to me, but not everyone's in that. So I think we're in a position where it opens up the kind of staff inclusivity we could have. I can't drive. I don't want to go into a house as a single female, age 22. So young advisors as well. It's not the worst place to start, is it? To build your experience, your confidence up. And you could just work from home.
How's with Kaylee? Kaylee's only 22.
No, it was Kaylee's old. So Kaylee's had a background in paraplanning.
Yep.
For a lot of years. She's very, very technical, very good. I would say to some degree she runs my life to a certain degree. We've also got Tash in Edinburgh. She runs another element of my life, which is some of the back office stuff. But yeah, I mean, Kaylee's starting to get where she's started to deal with a few of my things with clients, because I've never stopped her doing that or ringing a client. She's been involved in odd meetings, and then she started to get sucked into actually thinking it's quite rewarding. And then the rewarding parts then started to graduate her towards this. And then doing this, she's then starting to see what it achieves and just dealing with younger people and what, like, the vibe she gets off doing it. And I think she's loving it.
Is she just doing the financial planning side of things now, as opposed to...
She's hybrid at the minute. So obviously, bear in mind, she's only got 10 young clients at the minute on Zoom.
Yep.
Albeit it keeps building and there's a few in the pipeline. So if you say by the end of this year we could have 20, 25, it's not enough to say, there you go, that's full time. She doesn't necessarily want to drive around, so she doesn't want to take any of my stuff. So I would say she'll just keep building, and every time then she can just drop a day or remove herself from paraplanning. She's starting to. And I think the fact is, she's probably starting to, and I can't speak really for her, but I'd guess she's starting to enjoy that more than paraplanning. Yet she is a textbook, on paper, paraplanner. So this is only known because we've done this experiment. Otherwise she'd be paraplanning for the next 10 years.
And she's...
interesting in its own right.
So would you, in terms of personality type, she's probably more towards...
She's a technical... non-peoply introvert person,
but has managed to make a go of it on the...
She's fantastic on these appointments. You know what it's like? You get mixed personalities, don't you? You get some people that in certain environments are they can perform, they're extrovert, and then you get deep down, they're not show people. And that's to some degree what I've said to you that I'm like. Kaylee is, in a way, that kind of person. So she's really, on a one-to-one basis, I would say she's better at any financial planning appointment than me. So obviously you put her on Zoom, and Zoom and technology now is good enough where she's sat in front of them, really. Virtually. So it's been quite rewarding to see, because it's given her something that never would have happened potentially,
and sort of giving her a nice sort of it's a nice way of introducing it, isn't it, on Zoom? I think it's,
I mean, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it, if you got her on something like this, like what her perspective would be. But yeah, I mean, she's a career paraplanner, really.
Yeah, and you sort of have in your own head, I certainly do anyway, I've got sort of like this, you shouldn't do this, but you almost put people into boxes, really, don't you? And you sort of think to yourself,
well, even if it's by skill set, you know, in my case, I see people with a skill set, so you automatically say, well, you'd be good at that, and they're like, well, yeah, I like the look of that, and then they do it. But what you realise is, and I know this is being debated about a bit at the minute, you're often in a situation where people surprise you when you put them in certain situations. And I would say anybody could be capable of that. And it's quite amazing, really, because someone can say, I don't even like people. You put them in a customer-facing role, and suddenly they're fantastic. It's just one of those weird phenomenons, isn't it, that happens. But I think the main benefit you've got as well, staff-wise, it gives us the flexibility where people can have a crack at anything. Because if you get everybody to get exams, and you get everybody up to, say, level 4, I mean, Kaylee's level 6, you get to a stage, don't you, where they can move around and just try different things. Because the model's like so varied.
Well, there's no harm, is there? And the reality is that it might be that someone's more, well, better on the financial planning side of things, or the compliance
She's
side.
better than me. I mean, I've been doing it, 30 years. She is better than me, without doubt. If you met her and then you met me, so you'd deal with her. She's just better at financial planning and cash flow modelling, and because she's so good with the software, which, let's face it, it's becoming more of an issue, the software, that how good you are in front of people using it. If my skill set's probably getting her to sat in front of clients, her skill set is with the clients more than me. So you start to realise, I didn't ever think about it from this, but I never thought of someone being better than me, which is quite weird, isn't it? But you realise sometimes your skill set changes as you get older, and I think now mine's become probably leaning towards, you think, well, am I better doing more business development and getting more people in that are better than me? Because the hard bit for a lot of these people is they can talk to clients on Zoom, or they can talk to clients face to face. Particularly younger people, they can do the job. They're not. There's a lot of very intelligent young people with good people skills, but the hard bit, how do they get in front of that client? That's what they struggle with. I don't struggle with that, so do I just do that and they do that?
I think, again, it's kind of I say it's a personality thing. I don't know. The new business side of things, though,
it's a quirky thing, isn't it?
I think you've got to. I've had this conversation with a few people on the pod as well, where people. I mean, I love it. I love that side of things. It's
the only thing that makes me jump out of bed. Nothing like servicing clients. It's not. I love clients. I like going to see them, but it just doesn't excite me like seeing a new client. I think that the reality is, if you love something, you're good at it. Nearly always.
I think as well, when you get a client, when it's been really hardly fought as well.
And I like that as well.
Yeah.
I like that challenge. I don't like easy. If a client comes easy, I'm a bit spooked by it. I'm almost like unselling myself.
It's not to say that from my perspective, I will do as good a job for anybody, but there is something very rewarding about getting something new. I always particularly like it if someone's given me an objection and then I've managed to turn it around.
Objections are your gold, aren't they? They're the things that if you turn them around, that client, when they are a client, is a better client. If you don't have any objections and it's all too easy, the client's often the one that's first to leave because it's so easy to leave.
Yeah.
Because they've got there's no glue, is there? So I don't mind rejection. I don't mind someone being rude to me. I think I'm just past any of that. But for some of these younger IFAs coming in, they get the exams, unless they go to one of the training academies where they get a little bit of sales training and objection training and look, even hardcore rejection training, so they understand what rejection actually feels like. I think it's quite scary for them. If you said to them, "Well, just go on that industrial estate, knock on some doors," they'd be like, "What?" It's not there. They've not been brought up that way. They've been brought up to just click a few buttons on a computer and go on the internet and Google something. My children are the same.
Sorry.
I mean, I often say, like with my children, like, "Oh, you go to the bar and get yourself a drink when you're on holiday." They don't even like doing that because it means them going and doing something. And you just realise the approach thing's changed because they're not used to physical approach.
Yeah, we're going off topic here a little bit, but I agree. But it's weird though because my son's 3, and he has absolutely no. It's quite refreshing to see that he doesn't have any
inhibitions.
Yeah, that's the right word. Yeah, no inhibitions whatsoever.
No fear.
So he'll just go for it. And
so the fear comes, doesn't it, when you start? Often when they get past 3, and you realise this is how people's brains work, and at different ages, like once that fear comes in of maybe falling over, they start getting cautious going down steps, or where they were just age 3 mental on a bike, then suddenly at 5 they're like acting like they're just going to fall off it like instantly. And I think that's what some of the probably for the, it must feel for some of the people coming into the industry. Like, how do you come into this industry where you've just done your exams and then suddenly you're expected to just find clients? It's frightening.
It's, do you know what? I think one of the best things, when I've spoken with people in general, I think one of the things that has made people stand out to me is particularly when they've had call center training. It's been interesting.
Yeah.
So I remember one paraplanner, I can't remember where it was now, but anyway, he had call center training, and it was really tough training as well, really tough. Like, he was dealing with customer service side of things, where there'd be a lot of complaints handled, and his job was basically to make it so that they didn't leave. That's tough.
It's a demoralising job, really, isn't it? If people complain at you constantly.
Demoralising, but I think the thing is as well is it puts all of this into perspective, which is that you can actually do somebody a lot of good here with your role as a financial planner.
Yeah, I mean, your power to do good is endless, really. I mean, there's not really any limits other than what you put in. And that's what you realise, like, even on stuff like that, how many firms just put limits on what you do. But goodwill goes such a long way. If you do things above and beyond, it might not seem like you're doing it for anything there and then, and you're probably not. But the amount of times I've done that over the last 30 years and things, you get a phone call from a client 20 years on. He did a mortgage for me 25 years ago. I've now paid it off. I had a client the other day, I was driving through a place and it reminded me of a client. And I just rung him out of the blue. He said, "Oh, it's funny, I was just talking about you. I've not seen him for 25 years. I just think, how else in life do you become memorable? That's the question, isn't it? I think if you can be memorable, and you have to do something nice or above and beyond nice to be memorable, be memorable.
No, I agree.
And I think now people aren't trained that way. There's not the community anymore, is there, where you help your neighbour out and stuff like that, and all these things comes back in goodwill. Different culture. So I think it's very hard for people. Come in, age 20 or whatever, straight into financial planning. There you go, find some clients. Like, where do they start? I wouldn't know what to do at that age. In this generation, can't ring, can't cold call. You can't really knock on doors because people are like, "What are you doing?" Because people don't like being confronted, do they?
if it was me, I mean, I would. I don't know. This is just my opinion. You know, I'm not a financial planner, so but I would be LinkedIn, TikTok would be the thing that I would.
And that's exactly where my latest recruit is focusing now, on the basis that I've said, look, if you can master the digital side, that is probably your future. We've got the other bit cracked. We understand the non-digital side. My weakness is digital, because you need the time. Sat there quietly, which I struggle to do, just doing it every day. I've got the ideas, I've got the creative side, just not got the time.
So tell me, because I was going to go into that bit. So he is a student. He's doing his. Has he just done his ASs?
To be honest, I don't know. He's just doing A levels, so
Is he going to be getting his result? Is he going to be turning 18 soon? And then
he's 17, so he's 1 year off leaving school.
1 year, right? Okay.
So in 1 year's time, he walks straight out of his. Well, the minute he can be released, straight out of school, into a job with us. So I've offered him a job in a year's time.
And so what have you got him? What's he doing at the moment?
So we have a fairly strict policy where we like people to come through admin for 6 months at least, because I think if they don't realise how hard admin can be as a job in our industry. And it's like one of those, like the unsung heroes really, aren't they, in truth? Like everyone thinks, oh, it's just admin. Admin's tough in our industry. It's annoying. People let you down. Providers can be a bit of a nightmare. Things go wrong. You've got IT troubles. You've got it. It can be a tricky job. So I think if he starts there, that gets that out of the way, and I think then he'll probably do a little stint in paraplanning, maybe for 6 months. Bearing in mind that that stage he'll probably be age 19. So then we've got to weigh up the client side of it, because again, I've probably got to be mindful of age. Now, there's clients that obviously I could put him into, and if I say he's good to go, he's got his qualifications, if he has by then, he could easily blitz Diploma 4 by then, potentially. I would say he could easily be the youngest person to ever get chartered in the UK, based on his drive. He's pretty much laser-guided, focused on it all.
How so?
I think it's just one of those things where if you're born with it, you're born with it. But if he's already noted that the youngest one was, I think, 21 at the minute, so well, I want to be that. That's it.
Is that what you said?
Yeah. He's not. I wouldn't say it's outright just mad competitive. It's just, when someone's just got drive, you can't train, can you? It's just there. And I don't think money drives him particularly. I think, it's a bonus, but I think honestly it's just drive, raw drive. I think if you get someone with raw drive, I'd say that's how I was age 18.
And
I didn't work for any reason. I just worked.
And so the idea is that he's going to take RO1 while he's doing his second year of A levels, right?
So he's doing RO1 now.
Yep.
Obviously the school holidays are coming up, which he'll have a bit more time to do that. I've put him under no pressure. I said, to be honest, I want you to focus more on your A levels, because at this stage that's the immediate priority. He was at one stage going to go to university. He's decided to come and work for us. I actually tried to say, I think you should go to uni first. There'll be a job in a few years still. He could have probably got into good universities. Oxford was on the table. Who knows? Oxford's like, whether he gets through the interview and all that, you don't know. But I think he's got the intellect and the potentially the results he'd likely to get. But he did a week's work experience with me and just said, that's what I want to do. Dead set, no compromise. That's what he's doing. Already doing research on where to get a job. So just absolute focus.
I think it's a good thing. I mean, I think
he's doing LinkedIn posts and things now, and he's still doing his A levels. And then you start to see how his posts are evolving, and you realise again, it's you underestimate when someone's brain's not got like all the stuff my brain's got in for managing bits of the business, having all the staff stuff, all the stuff that comes with a financial planning firm. And you look at someone like him who's, other than his A-level study, which is fairly sort of narrowed down focus, his brain's largely empty and he can just turn it and fully focus on it, and just that's what I want to do, and he just gets it done. And yeah, endlessly motivated.
Well,
so I think it's going to be interesting where he goes, like where he ends up.
It sounds like a really nice way of introducing him to the profession as well.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be careful, haven't you? I mean, it's like, I'm sure there's people here that would be thinking now, well, could you put, say, a 19, 20-year-old in front of any client? Let's say a new client who's a corporate lawyer, 100 grand a year earnings, he wants to talk about pensions. Would you do it? Or would that corporate lawyer, age 40-ish, start to think, well, this guy's a bit young? That's the tricky one at the minute, because that's uncharted ground for us. The only experience I've got of it is when I came across it, probably up to the age of 25, and then obviously it was a different time, so it's not really great experience really. But I think there's also an argument for saying, well, if I put him in front of some clients and say this guy's good, you need to just listen to everything he says, clients trust me, so we'll probably have to try and capitalise on that trust a bit to get him in front of clients that way. And I think it'll be a little bit slow build just initially, but then we're doing the young people thing, aren't we?
Well,
so,
I was about to say, I mean, that's
like
very
I've said
nice.
to him, why don't you just target young people? If you can build up off young people as your foundation, then there's a different model there, isn't there?
And then you could potentially get in, the way of getting in with young people anyway could be with the mortgage side of things, I would guess.
There's the mortgage side, but I mean, to be fair, my wife's still got her mortgage business, so we could use that to still capture the client and then move it into financial planning. Yeah, and that probably make more sense than distracting him with more exams and more stuff to think about.
You would have thought as well that the protection side of things at that age, if you've got young people that are coming through and they're 25, their protection premium, it must be absolutely nothing. It must be like 20 quid a month.
You struggle to get minimum premium if you quoted them for like 200 grand's worth of cover. But then the other argument is, do they need the cover? Because they might at that stage not have children, mortgages or anything.
But arguably speaking, though, you would think that it would be worth paying that for the fact that the premium's going to be so cheap when it comes to 10 years down the line.
Imagine when you were, say, 20, that's quite a hard sell, because at that, you're in a different place mentally, aren't you, at that age? You're not very insurance minded, you're a bit more reckless.
That's true. I mean, I guess
I know everyone's different, but
I don't. I didn't have protection. I wish I had taken it. I actually had one of my old candidates, Terry Stewart, that went and he went and tried to sell it to me, and I forgot to get back to him on the report, and I was just, you're absolutely right, I wasn't in the right place, but the premiums would have been nothing though. It would have been nothing, and would have been fully worth it, because now I'm paying 70 quid a month.
And I think as well, and this is something else you realise, when you start again speaking to like probably people below the age of 25, their only real, assuming they're ahead of themselves a bit on the financial side, their only real aim or want is probably to get their own house, is generally so you start to distract them with insurance bits, and it's like not really fitting what they want to hear.
Comes back nicely onto what we were talking about initially, which was the fee-based side of things, which is you've got you're not tied to anything.
I mean, the other side is we're an employed model.
Yeah,
like we wouldn't work as a self-employed model, because if you think about it now, if you place someone with me self-employed, and let's say we gave them, well, let's say we give them 20 clients, and then they had to go and find some clients because they're self-employed, and they try and fit into our flat fee model. That's not an easy model to sustain, is it? Self-employed. No. So it brings other questions into it, like some of the self-employed models. How would they do that if they wanted to? So then does that create bad outcomes for the clients of those models? Tricky one. And that's a big tangenty conversation that we're probably best not going down.
Well, that's the thing with you. I always thought that this was going to be long. In a good way. But yeah, I thought I think that there's so many bits that you've come on to that you've sort of touched on slightly where they're massive conversations in themselves.
Yeah. They're like part 3 and 4 if you're not careful. Aren't
Yeah,
they?
I think so. Yeah,
you could almost just address the self-employed via employed model.
And then you also brought up as well the fact that you're employing somebody up in Scotland and Devon as well.
Yeah,
and
we're all over the country.
All over, exactly. And this is probably something that more people need to do as well. What I think we'll have to do is, I think we'll have to get you in again, because when you're around.
I think maybe think of some of the bits you can pluck from this, and there's definitely at least 1 or 2 other conversations around just key bits.
I think so, without a doubt.
And some of them are, let's face it, like they're quirky as well, because they're not necessarily massive conversational pieces at the minute, are they?
No, and I think the fee-based financial planning side is going to be. I wonder how that's going to come up in what the reception is going to be like, because from I think a lot of firms, interestingly, when I went to Next Gen Planners last week, there was somebody that was doing fee-based financial planning solely.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unique. We're not
it's not, but it's not something that happens very often. And and one of the other chaps was saying, well, look, how do you implement it? How do you do this? How do you do that? And it was
well, we were going to phase it in. So this is where we were going to phase it in, and then we thought, you know what, we'll just do it, because it's like everything. You know, once you start doing change is actually not that bad, is it? I think just that initial.
I think it's going to. The issue, I guess, the main thing is going to be the income, because it's going to take a bit of a hit initially, I suspect.
I think this year will be down versus if we'd done some clients on percentage fees, but then the other argument would be, would we have got some of those clients?
Is it new clients then are just going on to the fee-based side of things?
All new clients, and then we've switched a few historic clients because we've been doing work at the minute.
Yep.
And then some of the other ones we've left percentages, but we've brought the fees down a bit. But we've done it very gradually.
Yep.
Because it's a bit of a cash flow mire. If you're not careful, you've got to just plan it a little bit.
Yeah, I think
we've cherry picked. So like the clients with $1 million plus with half the fees. Because to be honest, we should anyway.
Well, it's a big. I think as well that was the thing that was hitting me, was the fact that, potentially speaking, this person is going to be spent. Their fee might reduce to what like 20% of what it was, or even less. Well, it could be 20 to 50% of what it was initially, and that's where I was thinking, well, you're going to take a hit there, but that's probably not the average client. The average client is probably not going to be like that.
And to be honest, there's been results. So there's results from where we've half fees and then got more clients. So then you think, well, actually, it's not really cost us anything, because you realise if you're going to ask for a referral, you do it when you're about to halve someone's fees, don't you?
Yeah.
Even if you've asked them 20 times before, that's a time that you never miss. So my conversation with some of these clients has been like, right, I need more people with $1 million plus. Get me talking to your friends. You know now what we've been prepared to do. And that's when you start to realise there's different ways to turn a negative into a positive, isn't there? And that's, I'd say, if ever you've got to deal with a negative, you can always turn it into a positive in this industry, somewhere.
Just last question I'll ask is, if someone's thinking of implementing fee-based financial planning into their business, what one bit of advice would you give them?
If they were doing it as an established firm or like quite new?
Let's say established firm, because if you're a new business, it's going to be pretty easy to.
I think an established firm, you've just got to decide what you're going to do at the start of a year, just as it's a nice threshold. To do it in the middle of the year, there's enough going on anyway, and you're in your group. So like, you come off your Christmas holiday, you're all relaxed, and think, right, I need a bit of stress. I'll change my fee agreement, mess about with my client agreement, so I've got to rejig all that, get that done first. Have a plan and know why you're doing it and how you're going to promote it. Because I think if you promote it right and you use it right, you should get either more referrals, more clients, or it won't show instantly, but you'll get stuff you didn't know you were going to get just because you're more cost effective. And I'd phase it in gradually. If you go all in, like start messing around with talking to your existing clients at that stage, you could easily be bankrupt.
That's a good way.
Because it's just too much, too quick if you're not careful. So we've done it. Bear in mind we're in a slightly different position because we bring quite a lot of new business in. As fast as we can bring new business in, we can take a couple of fees down here and there, so it like compensates. Some businesses aren't doing that much new business. That's when it's a lot more challenging to do, if you think about it, because it's nothing to replace what you're losing.
That's a good place to leave it. Thank you so much for coming along.
Thank
and
you
we'll have to get you in
talk.
again. Yeah.
Great conversation with Julian Baker at Livesmart Financial Planning. Covered so much in the talk. So we covered his history, how he got into the profession, initially starting out at Brittanic after being a car salesman. We also touched on fee-based financial planning as well, and the merits and I think it's fair to say some of the more challenging sides of bringing a fee-based model into a firm. We also talked about Harvey, his student that he's just taken on, who's just in the middle of doing his ASs, and the plan for him in the future as well, and hopefully taking him on to being a financial planner later on down the line. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you liked it, just go and subscribe on iTunes, wherever you're listening to it, Spotify, wherever, and just share it with your friends as well on LinkedIn as well. That'd be great. Thanks for listening.